My name is Deshawn Lawrence, and this is me. When learning in this course, I saw three different themes that I would like to work with. The first one being communication from a bird's eye view, the second one being presentation and disclosure of self, and the third one being communication within close relationships, with the emphasis on the intimate relationship. First and foremost, communication is imperative due to physical needs, practical needs, social needs, and identity needs. Some principles of communication is that communication is irreversible, meaning that once you say something, you can't take it back. You can add on to the information, but what is said is said. And another principle of communication is that communication has content dimension and relational dimension. Content dimension meaning information explicitly said, like pass me that water over there, or how are you doing? And relational dimension meaning or expressing how you feel about someone, maybe through nonverbal communication or your tone of voice. When it comes to communication and social media, there are just rules that are pretty much common sense, like being courteous or not posting not posting stuff that are too private about yourself on social media. When it comes to communication on a cultural level, there's different aspects that you need to be mindful of, varying from culture to culture, such as power distance, which is the distance you and a person stand when you guys are talking, how they view individualism versus collectivism, and different things like that. When it came to me and my culture, I noticed that my culture tends to be more about collectivism, whereas America tends to be more about individualism. And the way how we talk and communicate with one another is more antiquated than how Americans communicate with one another. Unfortunately, when it came to assessing my communication skills, where I had to assess my intercultural communication competence, I ranked a 7 in cognitive culture intelligence, a 9 in motivational cultural intelligence, and a 9 in behavioral cultural intelligence. And based on the scale, I am not competent in any of these, which is pretty surprising and shocking to me, but I need to work on that, and I will work on that. When it came to my second theme of presenting and disclosure of self, I learned quite a bit in this section about myself specifically. First of all, self-esteem is definitely the driving force of whether or not or how you disclose and present yourself. It plays a big part. And also another key piece I've learned is that how we choose to disclose information about ourselves is important in determining our impression management. And impression management is basically strategies we use to influence how people see us. Something surprising that I found out about myself doing the Johari windows reflection is that the smallest pane I had was actually the open section where I actually open up to people. So I don't open up to people a lot. And the biggest panes I had was both hidden and unknown. That was shocking to me because I didn't know that I had a lot of hidden things about me that both myself and no one else knows. But now I know that. After reading this chapter, I personally believe when I do disclose information, it's mostly because of catharsis, of the cleansing of my soul, or self-clarification. And reasons why I probably do not self-disclose a lot is probably because of fear of rejection, negative impression, and loss of control. When it comes to assessing my communication for online and offline self-disclosure, I found that face-to-face disclosure was what my greatest strength, but I didn't really do online disclosure or depth online disclosure. Finally, when it comes to theme 3, which is communication within close relationships, we form relationships simply because of things like appearance, similarity, proximity, and how willing we are to disclose with one another. One thing I found interesting is that there are different components of initiating or coming together to form a relationship, such as initiating, and also different components of relationships falling apart. A lot of times, if you don't maintain the relationship using relational maintenance, you can see that the relationship might fall apart or come apart. With my emphasis being on romantic relationships, I personally strive for consummate love, which is intimacy, passion, and commitment all combined. But right now, after reading and going through this class, I think I have compassionate love, which is only intimacy and commitment. The fact that my relationship, as well as everybody else's relationship, at times have problems and we have disagreements, I feel like stuff that I can do to make disagreements less or to try and fix them are asserting confirming messages such as recognition, acknowledgement, endorsements, as well as using iMessages and paraphrasing to make sure that my spouse understands where I'm coming from. And also seek first to understand and then be understood. That's a really, really key one. When it comes to paraphrasing, the paraphrasing assignment actually helped me a lot because I found that me and my boyfriend were going through something and that really helped us solve our problems. So I will be using that in the future, definitely. When it comes to things I can do to enhance my relationship, by taking the assessments, I've learned that I've discussed offense more often than the average person, as well as I've engaged directly in explicit forgiveness. And I personally have a high compromise level, higher than the average. To sum it all up, I've learned a lot about communication as a whole, and I will be using a lot of the things that I've learned in this class in my future, definitely. One key point that I forgot to mention, or the last key point that I forgot to mention, is that my social integration and emotional connection is higher than the average college student, and I'm very proud of that. With that being said, thank you for listening to my This Is Me project.